Welcome to the Edge of Greatness podcast.
What I want to know is that I see a lot of these leaders and they present this confidence and this ability to know, like, I know this is how I'm going to do it. And they show this strength behind their leadership approach. Can you think of a time when you doubted your leadership abilities?
I remember when I left here as the head coach and went to Ohio State, I had and still have the same, a great mentor. His name is Dr. Pat Spurgeon. He's a retired English professor from Georgia Southern, and we connected in 1991 and have remained very close since. And I remember when we left here, he said to me, there's going to be a moment in time where you're sitting in that big office at Ohio State and you're going to question, can I do this? And he said, at that moment, you have to remind yourself that you can, because you can. But you can't let that seed of doubt creep in there. And I thought, well, okay, that's good advice. And so I was there about 2 months, and we had just had a whirlwind recruiting. We were only there the last 2 weeks of recruiting, and then I had to get to know all the players. And here I was coming from 1AA, and I had to develop those relationships where they would have confidence in what we were going to do. Our program was very different. The way it was constricted, it was just different than what they'd had. And so after about 2 months, I was sitting in the office late one night, and I was thinking, gosh, I don't know if this is clicking, connecting. Am I the right person for this moment, this place? And then right when that seed of doubt entered my mind, I remembered Doc Spurgeon's comment. And he said, his voice in my mind said, hey, you're going to have this moment and you're going to have to talk down that doubt. And I think without question, we all do. When I came here as a president, I'd never been a president. I'd only been a vice president for 2 years. And now I'm going to be the president. And, it's such a grander scale than being a coach. As a coach, I had 100 guys and 12 coaches. And now I've got 2,000 employees and 12,000 students and 6 different academic colleges. And I don't know as much about those as I do about offense, defense, and special teams. I felt there was really 2 things I had to do to not have a false confidence. I mean, it's easy to say, I can do this. Mm-hmm. But, how do you, make sure that that's true? And so one was, I wanted to study and study and study and study the world that I was in. And I was very fortunate that I got to spend 2 years at the University of Akron as a vice president. And I just went to school on higher ed and administration and tried to learn as much as I could about every facet. And that hasn't ended. The curiosity you need for knowledge is never ending. And so I felt like I had to do that. And then the second thing I felt like I had to do, whether it was when I took over as the head coach at Youngstown State, took over at Ohio State, came here as the head coach, if you will, is that I had to listen to the people who were living it. I had to hear from them. I had to know what they're thinking. We have a little acronym we call WAYT. And that means, what are you thinking? And I kept reminding our coaches and my administrative staff and so forth, it's important to know what people are thinking, because you can learn a lot from them because they're living it. They've been here longer than you. I had deans who had been here 20 years. I had faculty that had been here a long time. I had students who were in their 3rd or 4th year. They'd been here longer than I had. I needed to know what they were thinking. I have a group called my presidential mentors, and there's about 20, 25 students from broad backgrounds, broad majors, belief systems, preferences, ideologies, whatever. And we sit and I pick their brain constantly. I want to know what they're thinking. I want to know what they would do. And I always have said that when you're trying to learn the people you're trying to serve, if you're constantly probing and asking questions or wanting to learn from them, 2 things can happen if you ask them what they're thinking. And that is, you can come up with some great ideas. When I first got here to Youngstown State, I sat with my presidential mentors. I said, okay, you guys, what would you do first? What's the first thing we need here at Youngstown State to get better? Having no idea what the heck they'd say. And I was amazed. Their consensus was, you know what? We need to fix the streets. I said, fix the streets? He said, yeah, we have a beautiful campus. But you know, the entry-level streets, the potholes that don't look good, they got wires hanging down. It's not as good looking as the campus. And so first impressions are everything. When you drive into class, if you're a commuter, you want to feel good about what you're driving into. When you're visiting the campus to see if maybe you'd like to go to school there, or if you're a faculty member thinking about, do I want to come to work there? You want to feel good about it. He said, I would fix the streets first. I said, wow, that's a great idea. So that's what we did. And Wick Avenue, which is our main east side street now, is a gorgeous entree. Fifth Avenue, we're just finishing this year. It's taken us a long time. We got a big federal grant, and it's going to be gorgeous. It's going to change the whole, that sides, Lincoln Avenue, all those. We wanted that to be nice. But had I not asked the question, I would have had no idea that that was that important to them. The second thing that can happen if you ask someone what they're thinking is you can maybe clarify a misconception they have. You know, it's like, let's take baseball or football. When our student athletes, we always talk to them about strength training and nutrition and those kinds of things, because there's so much information out there. Everyone thinks they're an expert in those areas. What do you think we ought to be doing? Why? And then they might have an idea that really isn't founded in good data, good science. And you might be able to clarify the thinking they have. And then they say, oh, okay, now I know why we're doing this. And now they'll buy in. But as you know, you go back to the dorm as players, you always sit around talking, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Why am I taking this calculus? What's this have to do with engineering? I want to get in. I want to get my hands on things. And, you know, if you can tell them, well, here's why we're doing this. Here's the science behind it. Here's the data behind it. Here's the experiences. Here's the people who have become successful at what you want to be successful at. Well, here's what they've done. That's why we do that. And so those are the two things, you know, I think that are really important is you've got to study and learn, and you got to find out from others what they know. And then if you can take both of those things into how you want to approach things, I think you have a chance to improve both the culture and also the execution of whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that, because I think so often nowadays we want to hear ourselves talk. So we want to come in and want to start giving commands and directions right out the gate without really knowing what we're giving directions to or why we're giving those directions. And I love the idea that they came and said the streets, because I actually came back to campus. It was a few years ago now. One of my teammates was getting inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame. And I think the campus looks gorgeous. The addition of the inside facility, the Watts, and then the off-campus living apartments in the bookstore, which wasn't there when I was there. It really makes the place shine. And then the softball facility is right there next to the football field now. And it just really ties it all together. But it made it for a very welcoming drive back in to a place that I hadn't been in a long time. And I love,
Charles, you were here.
Brandon Capon was inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame. And I want to say it was 2 or 3 football seasons ago, because they do it during the football season.
You wouldn't recognize the place now.
I imagine. Yeah.
It's so much fun. You'll have to get back over here. But that was important. Second thing that presidential mentors told me is we need better places to live. That's why we've built 1,000 new apartments and places they're living in. Heck, I told Ellen, we ought to move into one of those. That's nicer than living in the Pollock house here on campus. But those things are important, but that's what's important about working with people, finding out what's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes as leaders, we come in and say, okay, we've got all this infinite wisdom. We've been waiting for this chance to have this position. Now we're going to tell everyone what they should want.
Yeah.
No, you have to find out what they want.
Yeah. And the value of asking the right question and the value of listening and actually paying attention to what they're saying goes well beyond the knowledge that you have that you're bringing to the table, because now you can direct that knowledge in the right way. So
most important part of communication is listening.
yes, I absolutely agree.
So
I
critical.
absolutely agree. So what I want to go now is I think there's some other things that we can go into here from the leadership side, because I think in life as well as sport, there's going to be a time when we face adversity. Adversity is a huge piece of growing and leading and being able to come back from tough stuff. And for me, I want to know a little bit about, there's 2 times in your career where I think that you were faced with some adversity and you did an amazing job of making the team understand that it was just a small part of the process. At least that's my belief, because you bounced back so quickly. But 1995, you were just coming off of a national championship run and your team came out and you had a rough year going 3-8. But then 2 years later, you found yourself back in the national championship game and you won another title. Similar situation occurred at Ohio State, 2004, 2 years after your national title run. The team went 8-4, which isn't a bad season by any means, but obviously at OSU, that's considered a bad season. It was 5th in the Big Ten. You still won your bowl game. But after that season, you had 6 straight huge seasons competing for the Big Ten title, finding your way back to 2 national titles, opportunities. What did you do in those situations where you were faced with a moment that could be a wrong turn? And how did you right the ship and allow those players to know that, look, we're going to grow from this and become stronger and come back and be great again?
You know, I think there are 2 critical things that have to occur. The first one is you have to look in the mirror and you have to evaluate what we could have done better as leaders. That's the start. A lot of times I see in sport, I hear coaches say, well, we need better players. Well, that has nothing to do with what you're doing, okay? So looking in the mirror, let's take that 95 example you had. Okay, so not only were we coming off of a national championship, we were coming off 4 straight years in the national championship game,
right?
Winning 3 of them, okay? So then all of a sudden we're 3-8. So what didn't we do? And so we did an autopsy of ourselves first. And what we found was really interesting. We went back to the most minute details. We took every practice schedule and we said, okay, maybe we've done something different in our preparation. And so what was really interesting is what we learned was 1991, 2, 3, 4, played 15 games each year. So we played 60 games.
Wow.
And what we saw was throughout those 60 games, those preparations, is our amount of time we spent in what we call individual period, which is not working with 7-on-7 or team or whatever. You're just working on your fundamental skills. We allowed ourselves to creep backwards to how much time we spent on fundamentals. Well, we got away with it because we had veterans and we had success and it was rolling and so forth. Well, after 94, we lost 26 seniors. And then we lost 1 player. If you remember in 95, that was a strike year in the major leagues.
Yeah.
And we lost a player prior to preseason who went to become a scab player during the major league deal. So we lost 26 guys that were really good, guys that we had probably 4 or 5 that played 58 out of those 68 games and were all Americans and this and that. Well, maybe they didn't need quite as much fundamental, but the younger guys did. And so first thing we did is we went back and we said, hey, starting in 96, we're going back to our fundamentals better. And slowly improved to a year after that. We were back to the top of the mountain. That was critical. The other critical part was asking our players what it was they thought we needed to do to get back to the top of the mountain. Again, we couldn't come out and we could do our autopsy, figure out what we could do better. We could then execute that, but it couldn't stop there. We had to have them look in the mirror and say, okay, what is it we need to do? What ideas do you have? That goes back to your WAYT. What do you think? We need to know what they were thinking. Why did they think it happened? No. And very similar in 2004, we were coming off 2 really good years. We won the championship in 2002, and then we could have gone back to the national championship game in 2003, and then we had our one loss to Michigan. And so we start 2004, and we're a younger team. And we start out 3-0. And I remember thinking to myself, man, we are not a 3-0 type team. I mean, we're not as good, but we'd come off these great seasons. And so they thought, okay, here we go. We're going to have all these great teams. And we lose 3 straight games. And now we're 3-3. And it was one of those seminal moments where we had to look in the mirror and say, okay, what do we have to do differently as coaches? And we need to have our team look in the mirror and say, what do they need to do differently? And what do they think we should be doing? We needed their input. We wanted their ownership. And then after that, 3-3, and then the following game, I think we won 5 of the last 6 that year, upset Michigan. They were really a good team, and we beat them, and then had a good bowl game. And then really, 05, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we were Big Ten champs or co-champs, one or the other, right after that. But we kept going back to making sure we were evaluating ourselves as coaches. What can we do better? And not assuming that it's, the minute you start blaming the performers, I think as a leader, you're going to head the wrong direction. And so I thought our staff did a great job of both figuring out how they could be better and also getting input from the team to get the ownership as to what they needed to do to get better and what ideas they had for us to integrate into what we were doing. So those were really 2 critical times. Ultimately, though, you have to believe that you can. And so I don't know that we ever lost our belief. We just kind of maybe lost our way.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we still had the belief in one another.
No, that's awesome. And I love how you were able to push more or less the pause button to stop the momentum from going the wrong direction and to change it. Because I think that's the other thing too, is a lot of coaches, they get sucked up in the moment. They get anxious, and all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my gosh, we got to win. But they don't take that time to slow down and go, okay, let's reevaluate. Let's ask some questions. Let's see where we can change and get this back on track before the wheels come off and we find ourselves rolling down the hill.
That momentum in a season is really hard. And I think it comes from a little bit when you hit those tough moments, all of a sudden the finger pointing begins. And in a situation like Youngstown State, who had just been to 4 straight national championships and were used to a lot of notoriety, and then it starts going the other way. If the fingers pointing starts happening, you're not going to get back anytime soon. And at Ohio State, when all of a sudden, with the amount of media coverage we had, and we didn't withhold our guys from being with the media, and some of them at times would make a mistake and point a finger here or there. But the momentum halting can't happen if you allow the finger pointing to begin.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and join us again next time as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But no matter what happens, remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please take a moment now to subscribe, rate, and review our show. We are all on the edge of greatness.